All right. We've got measurements, all of that stuff covered. Let's make sure that we understand the masking and the posing aspect of transpose. So for this, I'm going to bring in, let's just go and bring in demo soldier. And I'm going to select that eyeball while it's selected to just hide everything. And you already know this, but the real purpose, the first thing that transpose had was this topological masking. Now the story behind it is, I'm working with ILM and Ubisoft. I was going to Ubisoft quite a lot, and doing EA, and ZBrush owns this organic sculpting market, but they do not own, and they have almost no foothold in the hard surface and the mech and clothing and stuff like that that they do now. So all of the artists are asking me, can't we get, let's say, just a grid, an axis on the floor, For example, this. People were asking for this grid. You may or may not be able to see it based on the compression. They've been asking for that forever. And they wanted that to be a real-world space, and they wanted this grid, and they wanted a gyro. So they wanted a floor, and they wanted a gyro. It's a horrible name, but they wanted a gyro like Maya, so that when you extruded out a polygon face, you knew where that thing was going. Or if you had to move a vertice, you could flick along the normal and then move that out. But anybody want to take a guess at what kind of problems these amazing innovators that are Pixologic, what problem would they have with implementing a simple gyro inside of ZBrush? Why would that be a problem for guys that do crazy features like panel loops? And you guys let me know. Think about it, let me know, because this drills home everything that is significant about Pixologic. So why? Somebody give me a shout out. So switching to real-world coordinates would cause trouble with the base code. Okay, that's a good reason. They might use that. It's in space and not on the model because it's RAM based. The answer is actually real simple. It's because somebody else already did it, and I'm not joking. I don't know that that's technically it, but I know that that's part of the problem. So somebody already created a gyro. It already existed, and its functionality has already been explained, and there is nothing new or innovative in a gyro. Now, the patent's not terribly important. Think Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs he doesn't just create another computer box. I mean, if you look at that Mac Pro that's coming out now, that's basically a cylindrical fan from Dyson, you get a sense of it's not enough to just do what other people have done, but you need to imbue, you need a new form with new meaning. And that's really key to the way Pixo develops. So they did not want to do a gyro because it would tie them in to this old world approach to things, and it would lock them into that for the future of their code. They wanted something different, something that would allow them to do things differently than ever before, that would open up a new world of potential, basically. And that sounds markety and philosophical, but it is an incredibly aggressive and important technique for survival. I'll say it that way. Who's going to come out now and create a social network that competes with Facebook? Nobody. Not even Google. Because you're doing the same thing. If you want to compete with somebody as large as, say, Autodesk, every part of you has to be honed to something new and unique, and just down to the knife's edge. So that causes problems for us guys that just want to use it though. So there we go. Alright, so the key point, the key thing was, alright, you know what, we're going to create a gyro-esque, but Pixologic will always combine a kind of a one feature with another feature that has significance, and in this case it was a gyro that when you pressed control was also about posing. So you can almost think about the logic, right? The idea is we need to be able to move parts, okay, and the assumption is we're dealing with organic characters, and then they think logically. They're like, what is the most significant problem with dealing with organic characters? It's not moving a part. That's simple. That could have been done, you know, years ago. One of the most difficult things is, say, posing or moving lots of parts in a way, you know, that has meaning, i.e. posing. So their first segue into some kind of gyro-esque had to tackle this larger problem of posing. And that's exactly what it does. So if we come in, control click, you drag this out. If you have symmetry on, then it's going to work. And I remember when I first saw this, I was just amazed. Nobody had ever done something like this before. I had never even heard of it as a possibility. I come in one day, I got a new version of ZBrush, and this is basically on it. And of course I complain. I'm like, well, that gyro is not going to work, but holy crap, this is awesome. Okay, so the way this works, and the way I explain it to people, because people who are just learning this, the mistake they make is they'll click on the body, control click on the body, and try to isolate the hand. And you'll notice that there's a little bit of fall off. So that's not the way to do it. Whenever I teach this to people, I always say, okay, look, if you want to isolate the arm, you try not to have more than 1 inch of screen space. You just control click. You really want it to be a short space. And you have to point that out to people when they're learning, because they will not get that themselves without lots of trial and tribulation. And you'll always have people going from the arm. 1 second. There we go. You'll always have people going from the arm down or trying to do something of that nature. Come down from here and try to get that foot. And that's just too hard. This is certainly better than it used to be. It used to have a lot more fall off. But now it's not. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. It flows along topology. So we can quite easily isolate that edge loop. But if your line is not flowing along the vertices and you start to deviate, then things start to change. Now, in some characters, this is a real problem. Let's see if super average guy has this problem. It is literally flowing along topology. So I'm going to divide this so it makes a little bit more sense. But this is going to be a problem. So as I control click, you know, things become problematic in terms of how to isolate stuff. Plus, let's say I want to isolate this arm. It becomes hard to isolate the arm without also isolating those edge loops there and these edge loops in here. So, and you can see this guy streams all the way out there because it's not really a proper edge loop all the way around the arm. So this was one of the beginning points where calculations for features become very dependent on topology. This is again ZBrush 3. So the calculation enters into it and we start saying, okay, we have to control topology. If we control topology, We control how the features behave. So then we started to do things, well, you can see it with panel loops, you can see it with mesh extraction, and you can see it with Dynamesh and Shadowbox. Pixologic is controlling the topology itself, and the reason why is because if it controls the topology, it controls the behavior of the tools, and you're in a benevolent dictatorship that is that you're able to get into on an easy visa and out on an easy visa to just get your job done, so to speak. Okay, so we've talked about masking, a couple of other elements. Masks, transpose can have alphas. You just select it, control click. It is dependent on, let's divide it. So there, if you drag back, this kind of skews. If you drag back out, it'll orientate again. So this is really meant to be kind of a one-off kind of situation. If you press Alt, this also functions. This can be useful for creating things, like let's say pouches and whatnot. Let's go into alpha here. I'm going to turn that off and press Alt. Okay. Now I can also just click on the surface, and you see how it moves out along the normal. That's useful because now I can say just move this out. I can use the center dot. Press Shift while I'm pressing that center dot, and it moves out along the normal. I'm going to get rid of that guy. You can also use this kind of as a flattening, so to speak. Dragging down. Dragging in. Drag in along the normal. So some hard surface stuff there. But of course what you're going to see is that this edge is not nice. And this is where we have to start getting into things like edge looping the boundaries. And that's really was the focus of everything after 3.5. Because 3.5 got you the brushes, and it got you transpose and subtools and these really powerful feature sets, but they just weren't enough. That kind of edge looping along the side really is quite bad. Alright, one other thing I wanted to share. If you hold down, let me see, is it... I have to do that with a mouse, I think. Okay. I have to do this with a mouse because I'm not sure with the Wacom pin. But anyways, I'm pressing Control, or you don't even need Control. Let's press Shift, this last green dot, and then also the right mouse button. And you can see everything kind of inflate. So that's a little trick that allows you to inflate stuff as you're pulling it out in space. And the only reason why I mention that is because if you're like me, you'll be going into Transpose and you'll be saying, what's this inflate? What's this axis? What's this trim? And that's all it really is.